and may I have an appointment and our channel vision you would like to interview?
We would love to come before you and talk to your vision to the people who watch your channel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have my cord, but
Right. It's very important. Yes. And also very beautiful and very nice place to go. The food is really good.
Đại sứ là lần cuối cùng ông gặp cô Đại Đức của ông Thành là lần nào vậy thưa ông đại sứ? Thưa ông đại sứ, lần cuối cùng ông gặp ông bộ trưởng quốc phòng cùng quan Thanh ở lúc nào? No,
One time the defense minister of Vietnam. And they like one.
Hello everyone. Actually, before we start the media roundtable, I'd like to just invite our host of today's venue, the Coast Community College District and the Coastline Community College leadership. They would like to come up and just take a group photo with the ambassador because they didn't get a chance to earlier, and they are our host venue today, and I'd just like to invite them up for a group photo.
Well, should we get away from this? I feel like this will be a beginning.
I don't know, it's a community college.
Well, that's true. A lectern is a good thing.
You want to get Dana and I's book in? Yeah. That's what we're doing.
Great. Thank you.
If we could just hold on 1 second. If we could just hold on 1 second.
Thank you all very much.
I hope so. Please come. The more education and collaboration, the better. The more the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Would you really join in? Oh, you can join in the table with us.
Sit right here.
Hello everyone, so we're just going to get straight to the media roundtable, and how this works is I actually will turn it over to the ambassador and the member of Congress, and Mr. Ambassador, you could call on the member of the media press here to ask questions as you see. And without further ado, once again everyone, United States Ambassador to Vietnam, the Honorable Ted Osias.
Yes, my name is Tina Hazan from the Viet Daily News. First of all, thank you very much for being here with us. Mr. Ambassador, I noticed that you have been, even prior to this meeting, you have met many representatives of different organizations. And I know you have had your earful as you did today. I was wondering if you can share with us what is your takeaway from all of these meetings with community leaders as well as people. What is the most surprising thing that you hear? What is the most overwhelming thing? And how do you become a different ambassador after this experience?
Thank you very much. Is this the one I should use?
That's mine.
Oh, that's yours.
mine.
Okay.
That's mine.
Maybe I don't use this.
Yeah.
Okay. For one thing, I felt great passion. There was great passion in the room today. There were very strong sentiments because many people have suffered greatly, or members of their family have suffered greatly, or still suffer. And so all of the people who are here before you are people who are very, very committed to promoting human rights. And I think I will go back with greater energy on the issue of human rights promotion than I've had before. I pointed out in the other room that every officer in my embassy is a human rights officer. And that's why they all carry this card to remind us of what we're asking the government of Vietnam on human rights. But I will be a more empowered human rights officer because I heard from my constituents, the people who I represent in Vietnam. And I don't mean in a congressional sense, but I work for the people of the United States. And I heard from people who care very much about this relationship. I heard their passion, I heard their commitment to improvement in human rights, and I take that back with me, and I take that responsibility very seriously.
I have a follow-up question, if I may. Follow-up question. Even in our community, the matter of fighting for human rights fought differently. For example, when a city would like to become a sister city with a different city in Vietnam, that matter is being seen very opposing viewpoints. What is your view of that? Is that a thing that we should do or we should avoid?
I was just speaking to Mayor Bao Nguyen about this. My view is that when you have more people traveling back and forth between our two countries, that's good. If you have more students traveling back and forth, Americans studying in Vietnam, Vietnamese studying in the United States, that's good. If you have more business people traveling back and forth, that's good. More investors, more tourists. We understand each other better. If a sister city arrangement can facilitate more exchange, that's good. Because relationship isn't just between two governments, it's between two peoples. And when a sister city relationship expresses the wishes of people on both sides of the Pacific, that's a positive development. Over here.
Yes, I have my question is two parts. You said before that the trade between Vietnam and the US now $36 billion. So
Yes.
next year will be $40 billion.
Yes.
And I know that there's big deficit between the two countries. That means the US, buy more goods from Vietnam than Vietnam buy goods from US. How could we reduce that deficit? Secondly, Vietnam still forbid a lot of cultural products from the US in Vietnam. For example, Trina, video of the Vietnamese newspaper here published in Vietnam. How could we, solve that problem? And will that include in TPP?
Well, first of all, we improved that balance last week. Two deals were signed, one with Vietnam Airlines for $7 billion worth of Boeing aircraft. The other was with Vietjet for $6 billion worth of Boeing aircraft. That's $13 billion by my calculation. That's a lot of jobs for Americans. Neither one of those deals is complete, I would warn you. Those are both deals that are in the works, but I believe both will come to completion in a very short time. The United States exports, more than half of our exports to Vietnam are agricultural exports. So they come from all over the country: soybeans, dairy products, chicken, meat, all sorts of agricultural products we ship to Vietnam every day. We have disputes that we work out. Sometimes there will be obstacles to trade on the Vietnamese side. There's sometimes that we slow down some Vietnamese products because we're worried about safety or have other concerns. That's our job, is to try to keep the trade flowing, to make sure that our exporters have a level playing field, have the opportunity to export, and that I believe that the TPP will be a very strong tool to help us increase American exports to Vietnam. It will also increase Vietnamese exports to the United States, and we have to be prepared for that. I think that's why TPP is something that causes very strong sentiments in this country, because it means jobs. It affects jobs.
Ambassador, let me add to that my take on your question and the important element of it. The question is the free flow of information. And so the question is market access for U.S. internet search engines. All right? So that's going to be the key question in this negotiation. If we obtain that market access, then we increase the free flow of information. Over the years, I've been the author of a number of Radio Free Asia bills to try to broadcast in Vietnam. The broadcasting is important, but far more important is what can be done on the free flow on the internet. And I think that can bring about real changes in Vietnam.
Follow question. Follow that question. Okay, but in most 20 years, the Vietnam government did not allow any product we do it here in the Vietnamese market.
Right,
Sell
we've
in
been
Vietnam.
very engaged.
And now, how you work in that, and what kind of tool you set in the TPP, stop the Vietnamese government that block all the product making in US by Vietnamese American people here to Vietnam. Because they block all the media product, all the entertainment product, they block all the book product, even the education book. They block everything.
The point you're making is that when it comes to ideas, that's what they're trying to block, right? When it comes to the export from the United States into Vietnam of ideas that might promote freedom, that's what they're attempting to block. That's why they block Radio Free Europe or Radio Free Asia, right? That's why they try to block that.
Even the product is not.
And products that books that push this ideal, they try to block it. That is why the internet would be such an opening if we end up with the U.S. Internet search engines being able to be utilized for the purpose of additional free flow of information.
Okay, I follow the question because I have example for you, and I think she can get more than that. Because they allow for the people for the product is nothing to do with political, okay? And then, for example, they got, years ago, music production here, so-called Bunsen, they have the permission to perform in Vietnam, but all the product they block. They don't have to distribute into Vietnam. All the product before that. So what you got to do with that?
Microphone.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention that on this trip, I also go see Facebook and Apple, a number of other companies in Silicon Valley. If Vietnam wants to compete in the modern economy, they have to allow innovation. There has to be a free flow of ideas. The Vietnamese say that they want to have an IT-based economy. Intel has made a major investment in Vietnam, over $2 billion. So there are companies that think it's worth making a bet on Vietnam. But you have to have what the chairman is talking about. You have to have a free flow of information. You can't have decrees that clamp down on the internet and still have a free flow of ideas. You can't have innovation if you constrict the flow of information. And I think there's a growing realization of that in Vietnam. Please.
We could go to Mr. Dong. I realize that it's a lot of us here, so I'm going to try to regulate the best I can to try to give everybody a chance to ask a question.
Thưa ông đại sứ, trong buổi họp của ông Nguyễn Tổng bí thư Đảng Cộng sản Việt Nam Nguyễn Phú Trọng và Tổng thống Obama đã đi đến một cái điều nhất thiết hai bên là sẽ bảo toàn sự vẹn toàn lãnh thổ của hai quốc gia. Kính thưa ông đại sứ, trong trường hợp giàn khoan 981 lại xảy ra thêm một lần nữa, phía lập trường của Hoa Kỳ sẽ như thế nào? Và liệu Hải quân Hoa Kỳ có nhiệm vụ cứu vớt tất cả những thuyền nhân, những thủy thủ, những tàu người ngư phụ của Việt Nam khi bị tàu Trung Quốc đánh chìm hay là không?
So the question is, Mr. Ambassador, around territorial issue. If China were to bring in another oil rig into area claimed by Vietnam as its sovereign waters, what would the U.S. stand and what would the United States do, especially in instances where Vietnamese fishermen boat get attacked or rammed by Chinese Coast Guard? Would the U.S. Navy rescue them?
Well, first let me say, the Chinese like to say that what happens in Bien Dom is none of our business. That's not the case. For 239 years, the United States has stood for freedom of navigation around the world. We have a right to operate our planes and our boats, and people who want to engage in commerce have every right to pass freely through the waters of the Bien Dom, the South China Sea. And we continue to exercise that right every day. So there were planes and boats of the United States flying and traveling through that area yesterday, there today, and there will be tomorrow. And we will continue to travel through that area. The United States opposes unilateral actions by any nation that increase tensions in the area. We don't take a specific position on the territorial disputes that are underway. We have a very strong interest in how those disputes are resolved. The position of the United States government is that those disputes should be resolved via diplomacy, via use of international law, and that we won't tolerate intimidation and unilateral actions. We have a three-part strategy for dealing with the South China Sea, and that is support for diplomatic efforts, which means unity with ASEAN, support for legal efforts, supporting the efforts of those countries that are
help you to make that fight happen, because we are here and you are there more days than not. And believe me, if I can get a visa, I will go to Vietnam.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Sanchez, for that. Now I'm pleased to introduce Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. When I was growing up, and probably long before many of you, I watched a movie, and then there was a TV show called The Odd Couple. In The Odd Couple, there were two people that were quite different, but cared a great deal for each other and worked together. Congressman Rohrabacher and I have forged that kind of relationship. People don't understand it, but we are close friends, and I am honored. And we work together on many issues. I am honored to introduce now Congressman Dana Rohrabacher.
Which one of us is on? All right. Mr. Ambassador, I want to thank you for joining us today. And let me just note, there's nothing that's been said so far that I disagree with. And I am a very proud member of the Royce Freedom Rangers, as our boss now, as the chairman of the committee, because we have made a commitment there, and Ed is providing incredible leadership. I want to point out that this is not a political issue. We're talking about the very heart and soul of our country, what we mean as Americans. We do work together, Democrats and Republicans. I point out, for example, we have Lou Correa sitting here, and let me note, he is no longer in public office, but he's here because he believed in the things that he was talking to you about when he was in public office. So, Lou, thanks for keeping your activism on these issues. So let me just go through a couple of specifics for the ambassador, rather than giving you if you haven't been inspired so far by what you've heard, I'm not going to add anything to that. So let me make sure that we have some specifics down. I think that if we do move forward with a different relationship to the government in Vietnam, it has to be step by step, and we have to have steps that we can understand, measurable steps. Things that they're going to have to do some things. And what I would suggest, perhaps, you start off with things that they could easily do if indeed they have a change of heart about the type of government that they want to impose in Vietnam. I would suggest, for example, Mr. Ambassador, that we have demand, number one, a list of, yes, American political prisoners, not political, American prisoners of war that were there, and we know that they kept some after the war. This has been a phony debate as to whether they did. They kept some Americans, but they also kept thousands of Vietnamese who had allied themselves with the Americans, and we needed an accounting of all those people, both the Vietnamese who were siding with us and the American troops that were there. We need an accounting of what happened to them after the war. And many of you folks have relatives that just disappeared, and you don't know. Well, we can bring an end to that era by putting some light on that, and they should be able to do that. Communist governments are very well known for keeping very accurate records on these people that they've murdered over the years. And number two, we need statements, just policy statements by the Vietnamese Communist Party stating that they no longer believe that religion is a hostile force within the society and that they are withdrawing their objections to religious faith. We need them to make sure that they recognize, another step, that someone has a right to an opposition newspaper. Then they can say, we believe that people should have an opposition party. And these are things that step by step they can tell us and show us that they want to have better relations with us because they're reclaiming the legitimacy of government itself. We Americans believe that government, and I say we Americans, we come from every ethnic group and every race and every religion. This place is especially proud of that. But we Americans believe that government only has the rights and the powers that are given to them by the consent of the governed. So we need to make sure that we insist that there be free newspapers, okay? Let there be a proclamation that anyone today in Vietnam that wants to have a newspaper will be free to do so. Or, its next step, if there are people who would like to organize a political party, they are free to do so. We need to have these specific announcements and pronouncements by that government. This doesn't cost them anything. If they don't intend to do it, let's not pretend to ourselves that they're going to respect human rights if they can't make these steps one little step at a time. So I'm anxious to hear from our Vietnamese American brothers and sisters here about some of the suggestions they have. That's the suggestion I have. Let's make it real. Let's have a new relationship with Vietnam, but let's not pretend that there are reforms going on when there aren't. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you all, both Congressman Rohrabacher, Congresswoman Sanchez, and Congressman Royce. I'm not going to take much more time. We are really here to listen to our ambassador, who is very gracious, coming not only just to this today, to this town hall community meeting, but spending really 3 days in Little Saigon to understand what our needs are. He's been a great champion of human rights. He has been open and responsive to our needs, and I am very, very pleased to introduce now the ambassador, also known as the president. Ambassador Ted Osius.
Xin chào quý vị và các bạn. Cảm ơn đã mới tới đây hôm nay. Và trước hết tôi muốn giải thích tại sao tôi sẽ nói tiếng Việt với giọng Bắc. Bởi vì lần đầu tiên khi tôi đã sang đến Việt Nam, tôi đã học với một giáo viên tên là Bà Hiền, giáo viên của miền Nam. Và lúc đó tôi đã nói với giọng Nam. Và sau khi chuẩn bị lần này để trở lại đến Việt Nam, tôi đã học với 2 giáo viên của Hà Nội. Và họ đã dạy tôi giọng Bắc.
Bây giờ xin lỗi tôi nói với giống Bắc. Tôi có thể hiểu cả hai giống và miền Trung và Nghệ An và miền Tây, các giống của tiếng Việt không sao. Và khi chúng ta có cơ hội để trao đổi ý kiến, chúng ta có thể nói bằng tiếng Anh và bằng tiếng Việt, giống Bắc, giống Nam. Không sao. Tôi như bà Sanchez đã nói về sếp của tôi, ông đại sứ cũ tên là Pete Peterson, và tôi rất là tôn trọng Pete Peterson. Ông ấy là bạn thân và ông ấy là đại sứ tuyệt vời, và tôi cố gắng rất nhiều để theo ông ấy, và ông ấy đã tôn trọng quý vị và các bạn rất nhiều. Và đó là lý do ông ấy đã bắt đầu truyền thống này để sang đây, và mỗi đại sứ đã sang đây sau đó để trao đổi ý kiến và để học nhiều của quý vị và các bạn. Tôi sẽ bắt đầu để nói một chút về nhân quyền, và sau đó tôi sẽ cố gắng giải thích tại sao tôi lạc quan về vấn đề này. First of all, in 2013, our two presidents of Vietnam and the President of the United States, signed a comprehensive partnership agreement. And they made a core pillar of that agreement human rights. And it is clear to everyone in the Vietnamese government that respect for human rights is the basis on which we can build a real partnership. In my embassy, everyone carries this little card. I always carry this little card. I am a human rights officer. Everyone in my embassy is a human rights officer. It's not just a job for one person. It's a job for all 900 of us in the embassy and in the consulate. And on this card is written examples of demonstrable progress on human rights. And there are specific requests that we make of the Vietnamese government. My friend Dieu Khai is here today. This card, we haven't changed it quickly enough because we were asking for his release. He's already released. But you know what? We're not satisfied if Dieu Khai is released and someone else is put in prison right behind him. That is not the way the United States works. We don't believe that you can export your problems and then fill in behind by putting more people into prison. That is not a satisfactory way for us to work. So what our request has been, and everybody understands this in the Vietnamese government, is systemic change. That means legal change. That means bringing Vietnam's laws into conformity with its international commitments and with its 2013 Constitution. Right now we're engaged in a very complicated process with Vietnam to change the criminal code and the criminal procedure code and the law on religion. Will we succeed? I don't know. I don't know whether we'll be able to have those laws changed as much as I would like or we here would like. I don't know. But I will try, and my team will try, and we will do everything we can to push the Vietnamese to keep changing those laws, to bring them in accordance with the commitments that they have made. And let me say something about the role of Congress in this process. You see here before you 4 individuals who care deeply about human rights in Vietnam. Their careers show, their records show how much they care. The administration and members of Congress don't always agree. That's okay. We don't have to agree on every point. When they write to the president, when these members of Congress write to the president, or push the president, or push the administration, it helps me. Every time I hear from you about your concerns, every time I hear from members of Congress about concerns, it helps me because I go to the leaders of the government and I have this card and I say, it's a choice for you. You have a choice. Do you want to continue to integrate into the world community? Do you want to grow your economy? Do you want to expand your trade? Do you want to have a good trade relationship with the United States? Do you want to have a security relationship with the United States? All this is possible. Or do you want to put more people in prison? Do you want to put more bloggers in prison? What do you think will benefit your country the most? Putting some bloggers in prison or boosting your economy? Putting some bloggers in prison or making sure your young people are educated? Throwing more people in prison or having a full relationship with the greatest nation on earth, the United States? So the reason I am optimistic, there are a couple of reasons. One is how much I've seen change in 20 years. When I first went to Vietnam to work for Ông Đại sứ Pete Peterson, there was no internet. There was no civil society in Vietnam. And today, there are 40 million people in Vietnam who use the internet. There are 30 million people in Vietnam who use Facebook. We have 200,000 of those people who are connected to us at the embassy via Facebook. And I read comments every day from those people. And many of them are young people. Vietnam is a very young nation. And you know what they express to me all the time? They express their hopes for the future. They express their hopes that Vietnam will be freer and more prosperous, stronger, independent, a country that respects human rights and the rule of law. That's what they tell me every day. They don't say, oh, we would like to be more repressed. We would like to be more like China. We would like to be isolated from the world. No, that is not what those young people want. Those young people want to be connected to the world. And I think we owe them. We owe them to do as much as we can to help them to stay connected to the world. The chairman mentioned that 92% of the people in Vietnam want a closer relationship with the United States. And let me emphasize, that's 92% of the young people, 92% of the older people, 92% from Mien Bắc, 92% from Vietnam. There's no division on this issue. Vietnamese are not divided on whether they want a closer relationship with the United States. When they list what countries are most important to them, they say United States. And about half that number say Japan. And about half that number say Russia. And a very small number of people say China. So what does that tell me? What do the people of Vietnam are trying to decide what kind of a country that they want to have in the future. I don't think that tells me they want to be like the Chinese with less freedom. It tells me they want to be like us with more freedom. And I think that we have an obligation. I feel it very powerfully. And I feel it today in particular because I face you, because you know what the suffering has been. You know from your families, you know from your own experiences how difficult it has been. So I feel that responsibility. I feel that responsibility, and I will do all I can to keep moving forward in that direction. Why else am I quan? Why else am I optimistic? See this little pin? It says 20 years. For 20 years ago, when I was working for first Chargé d'Affaires Desai Anderson, and then Pete Peterson, that's when we established diplomatic relations. This year, we have had an extraordinary number of people going back and forth between our two countries. I had the honor to host former President Clinton a few days ago. I was on that trip as well in 2000, that historic trip to Vietnam. And I had the honor of welcoming the president and former president. And he said, you know, when we decided 20 years ago that we Americans would accept you, Vietnamese, and you Vietnamese decided that you would accept us, that set us free. And I thought that was a powerful way to look at it. Now, did that set everybody free? No. No, it did not. And then I think President Clinton understands that. There's still a long, long way to go, because he talked about how much progress we hope for. But 3 cabinet members from the United States have visited Vietnam this year. 7 members of the Politburo will visit the United States before the end of this year. When Nguyen Phu Trong, the Tombitu, when he went to the Oval Office, that was a first. There's never been a Tombitu of Dan Kom San who has gone to the Oval Office before, who's gone to the United States before. And when he sat in the Oval Office with the President of the United States for an hour and a half, you know what the President of the United States talked with him about? Human rights, the rights of workers, the importance of freedom of association, the importance of freedom of religion, the importance of free speech and a free internet and free exchange. I was very proud to hear my president directly, politely, but directly and firmly say that this is what needs to happen for us to have the kind of relationship that we should have. They talked about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We have some disagreements within the United States. I don't have to tell you, there are many disagreements within the United States about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. My view is that this is a tool to bring about change. It's an important tool that can bring about change in Vietnam and in all the 12 countries that are part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We have made clear to the Vietnamese there are no 2 standards for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's only a high standard when it comes to labor rights or protection of the environment. There's only one standard, and it's very high, and every country must meet it. And if Vietnam wants to be part of the TPP and benefit from TPP, Vietnam has to meet those high standards too. And we have a different kind of a relationship than when I was in Vietnam working for Pete Peterson 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had an annual trade of $450 million. This year, our annual trade surpassed $36 billion, and I think it's going to be over $40 billion next year. Last week, we concluded 2 deals that involved selling $13 billion worth of Boeing airplanes to Vietnam Air and Vietjet. But even more important than that, we have a new relationship on something that really matters for the future, and that's education. When I was first in Vietnam, there were less than 1,000 Vietnamese students who studied in the United States each year. Today, there are 17,000 young Vietnamese studying in the United States. A few days ago in New York, a license was granted to Fulbright University, Vietnam. New, American-style, not-for-profit, merit-based university where academic freedom is the absolute basis of everything that will be done. An independent board and a guarantee from the top levels, from the Tombitu, from the Chu Thich Nhat Nuoc, from Mr. Zoom, that there will be academic freedom. Does that mean it will be easy to make it all happen? No. But 20 years ago, we established Fulbright Economic Teaching Program, and for 20 years, they have been teaching modern economics to officials throughout the country. Modern economics in a communist country. The kind of economics that you need to understand if you want to prosper. And we have built such a strong track record with Fulbright Economic Teaching Program that the leadership of Vietnam realizes that the only way to go forward is to have transparency and accountability and be part of the world, of the global economy. And they know that there's a price they have to pay to be part of it, and I believe they are willing to pay that price. That's why I'm optimistic. Now, it's my job to be optimistic. The only way I can lead my embassy is if I'm hopeful. I know that there are going to be many, many problems. I know that there will be times that we'll go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I know that there will be many individual problems, and I hope you will raise those with me today. And I will do my best. I promise you I will do my best. But I think that we should keep our eye on the long term. Something like Fulbright University is an investment in the future of Vietnam. And I think we should keep our eye on how that country can change over time so that its people can be happier, more free, so the country can be stronger, more prosperous, more independent, and be a country that respects the rule of law and human rights. Thank you very much.
Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi sẽ có cái microphone để nhận những câu hỏi của quý vị, và quý vị nào cần có cái nhu cầu để thông dịch thì chúng tôi sẽ thông dịch cho, và nếu không thì cũng không cần thiết. Nhưng mà trước khi mình bắt đầu cái phần hỏi đáp, xin trước hết được cái sự thông cảm cũng như là của tất cả ở đây, vì số quan khách rất là đông, cho nên nếu mà chúng tôi có thiếu sót quên quý vị nào thì xin kiên nhẫn và cho chúng tôi thời gian để được phép mời các vị đó. Và để tại vì chúng ta có hai bên quan khách đó, cho nên chúng tôi cũng sẽ mời một vị bên đây rồi mời một vị bên kia, rồi chúng tôi qua lại như thế nào. Và chúng tôi cũng xin phép là quý vị nào chúng tôi thấy trước thì chúng tôi sẽ đặt câu hỏi vào trước. Và xin trước hết tôi lúc nãy khi chúng tôi bắt đầu tôi nhận thấy là có anh Phát Bùi cũng có giơ tay trước, cho nên chúng tôi xin được phép mời anh Bùi Thế Phát, chủ tịch cộng đồng người Việt quốc gia Nam Cali và chúng tôi cũng xin phép là như vậy, vì cái thời gian ngày hôm nay chúng ta cũng rất là giới hạn, cho nên khi quý vị đặt câu hỏi chúng tôi có một cái yêu cầu là nếu được quý vị đi trực tiếp vào đặt cái câu hỏi của quý vị, thay vì có cái phần phát biểu rồi đặt câu hỏi, vì chúng ta không có thời gian cho cái phần phát biểu, cho nên xin phép quý vị là giúp cho ban tổ chức trực tiếp đặt câu hỏi của quý vị để chúng ta dành nhiều thời gian cho câu hỏi. Xin cảm ơn quý vị và xin mời anh Bùi Thế Phát có câu hỏi đầu tiên.
Vâng, và để theo đúng cái yêu cầu của anh Lý Vĩnh Phong và ban tổ chức, chúng tôi sẽ bỏ cái phần phát biểu và chúng tôi xin gửi cái phần phát biểu đó cho ông đại sứ Jack Oshus, và chúng tôi đi thẳng vào vấn đề đặt câu hỏi. I will do this in English so that the member of the Congress can follow us as well. We do not need to talk about the continuing violation of human rights and the grave condition of millions of people in Vietnam, because that we already know. We do not need to talk about that. But here's our concern. There have been very, very little progress. Of course, there are a lot more trade, and as you mentioned, $37 billion in between the Vietnamese, between Vietnam and U.S. And there are many more tall buildings comparing to before 1975. Yes, we acknowledge that. But outside of that, there have been very little progress in human rights, in the basic freedoms, especially the freedom of religion and freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. We know very clear that the trade, the prosperity that bring about by the trade between Vietnam and U.S. only benefit a very few, maybe $1 million. But what about the benefit for the other 89 million people, the poor people, the people who do not have, who's incapable of defending themselves with the oppression of the secret police and the dictator government? So my question is this: planning is a good thing, but it will not bring about important changes. We got to have carrot and a stick. We got to have penalties in the TPP, so that if the Vietnam government continue to break their promises, as they have always done with the WTO, what will you do in order to assure that?
Trước khi ngài đại sứ trả lời câu hỏi, chúng tôi cũng xin nhắc quý vị đặt câu hỏi là chúng tôi sẽ rất là yêu cầu quý vị giới hạn cái 30 giây để đặt cái câu hỏi của mình, và chúng tôi sẽ giữ nguyên cái nguyên tắc đó để chúng ta có nhiều cái thời gian. Xin mời đại sứ Thế Đầu Xíu.
For one thing, every single chapter of the Trans-Pacific Partnership has a provision for enforcement. They have strong enforcement provisions. You can't keep reaping the benefits of the Trans-Pacific Partnership unless you fulfill your commitments. That's true whether it's environment, it's true whether it's labor, it's true no matter what. But I would take a little bit of an issue with your overall characterization of trade having no effect on the way people's lives are lived. I think the fact that we have had an opening between our two countries, that we've had normalization, that we've had the bilateral trade agreement and included Vietnam in the World Trade Organization, has had an impact
It's not as much as we would like. There is nowhere near as much religious freedom as we would like. There's terrible restrictions on freedom of speech. But one thing that is changing, and I think this is very important, there was no civil society before to speak of. There were only very tightly monitored groups. Now there is a civil society that is growing in Vietnam, and there are these connections that people have via the internet that allow them to speak more freely than ever before. There is a risk in engaging. We take a risk when we decide that we're going to engage economically with Vietnam because they might not fulfill all of their commitments. My belief, and there's disagreement in the leadership of the United States on this, but my belief is that that risk is worth taking. That engagement is a risk worth taking. And that if you tie our two peoples together more through the private sector, through more tourists going back and forth, more students going back and forth, we're pushing very hard for direct flights between our two countries. If you have a direct flight between Los Angeles and Saigon, and more people passing back and forth, do you think that will have an impact on Vietnam society? I think it will. You are right to point out that the benefits from this trade are not shared equally. One of the things I worry about is that today in the development of Vietnam's economy now, there are some very wealthy people. There are a small number of very wealthy people who control a big part of the economy. And I think that's a worrisome trend. The Vietnamese, when they think about what kind of economy they'd like to have, they often look to South Korea as an example. Well, South Korea has chaebols. They have conglomerates controlled by just a small number of people. That's a little bit worrisome. But you know what South Korea also has? It has enormous connectivity, absolute freedom of speech, freedom of expression. The reason it's a successful economy is they allow innovation. And they allow people to share ideas. And I hope that's a lesson that Vietnam can continue to learn. And again, I'm optimistic. I think the future will get better and better for the people of Vietnam.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We have a question here from the back.
Dạ, tôi xin đặt câu hỏi. Tôi xin nói bằng tiếng Việt, các quý vị dịch dùng bằng tiếng Anh. Tôi muốn hỏi thưa ngài đại sứ là trong vấn đề mà nhân quyền, hỏi về 20 triệu người lính Việt Nam Cộng Hòa đã trong cuộc chiến Việt Nam và số phận của những nghĩa trang quân đội á, thì chính phủ Mỹ có một cái kế hoạch nào để vận động chính phủ Việt Nam xây dựng lại cái nghĩa trang quân đội và công nhận sự hy sinh của tất cả các chiến binh Việt Nam Cộng Hòa là sự hy sinh của những người đã bảo vệ Tổ quốc, chứ không phải là một cái phía mà được xem là sai trái hay là theo đế quốc Mỹ như họ vẫn dùng tuyên truyền ngày xưa.
Yeah, well, the question is, Mr. Ambassador, as you know, more than 1 million South Vietnamese servicemen and women have died fighting in the war, and until today, the final resting place for them, the Bien Hoa National Cemetery, has still been an issue. What will you do and the U.S. Embassy will do to address the issue with the government of Vietnam so that they finally restore the Bien Hoa Cemetery and recognize that these people, they die fighting for their country, fighting for what they believe in, and not just fighting for the U.S. imperialists as they always their propaganda in Vietnam. So what would you do to address the issue of the cemetery?
Cảm ơn rất là nhiều cho câu hỏi này. Congressman Lowenthal just visited the Bien Hoa Cemetery. Congressman Royce and all of the colleagues that you see up here have been very active in bringing to our attention the situation in the Bien Hoa Cemetery. It is a very serious priority. The provincial officials in Binh Duong province are now responsible for the cemetery, and it's no longer the responsibility of the military. That has good and bad aspects. It means families at least have access to the cemetery and can upgrade the graves of their loved ones. But it also means there's a threat that some of the land could be sold off, and that's very serious. I have my Consul General has engaged with the Binzung People's Committee, saying this is a very important, more than a symbol of reconciliation. This is tremendously important. And you know what? It's consistent with the values of Vietnam to show respect for the dead. It's consistent with the values of Vietnam. It doesn't matter if it's Mien Bắc or Mien Nam. The values, giá trị của người Việt Nam is tôn trọng, is respect for your elders, respect for your ancestors. This is not limited to one side or the other in this argument. So we have come up with a strategy. First step is for me to be directly in touch with the Binzung People's Committee. Second step is for me to go and see them and say, this matters. If you want reconciliation, this matters. And I'm told that the leadership of Vietnam wants reconciliation. They understand that this community represents tremendous talents and energy, and that reconciliation is in the benefit of both countries. So I will do as much as I can to promote that reconciliation. Thank you.
Xin cảm ơn đại sứ. Chúng tôi xin phép được dịch rất là sơ cái ý chính của ngài đại sứ là như chúng ta cũng biết là dân biểu liên bang Alonto đã từng ghé thăm nghĩa trang quân đội Biên Hòa, cũng như là các vị dân biểu đã nhiều lần lên tiếng về cái vấn đề nghĩa trang quân đội Biên Hòa, cũng như là về phía chính phủ Hoa Kỳ đều có cái nhìn giống như chúng ta là nếu mà thực sự chính quyền Việt Nam muốn hòa hợp, hòa giải với lại những người Việt khắp nơi trên thế giới thì đây là một cách mà chính quyền Việt Nam có thể chứng tỏ cái thiện ý hòa giải đó, vì cái truyền thống văn hóa của người Việt chúng ta lúc nào cũng tôn trọng những người đã hy sinh, đã nằm xuống, và đây là cái nơi mà họ có thể bắt đầu. Và về phần đại sứ Ted Osius thì ông ta sẽ đặt cái vấn đề này lên hàng đầu, và khi trở lại Việt Nam ông ta sẽ liên lạc với tiếp xúc với lại Ủy ban Nhân dân tỉnh Bình Dương, và sau đó ông ta sẽ đến gặp họ để đặt cái vấn đề này. Vì chúng ta cũng biết là nghĩa trang quân đội Biên Hòa sau khi mà đã không còn là khu quân sự nữa thì hiện nay được biến thành một cái nghĩa trang bình thường, coi như được quản lý bởi cái chính quyền địa phương, đó là Ủy ban Nhân dân tỉnh tại địa phương đó, và ông ta sẽ đến gặp họ để đặt cái vấn đề này. Xin cảm ơn đại sứ. Và chúng tôi vừa mới có câu hỏi bên đây, và sau đây chúng qua câu hỏi bên đây của chú Trục.
Kính chào ông đại sứ, kính thưa toàn thể quý vị. Tôi tên là Đinh Công Chuột, tôi là cựu tù Việt Cộng cải tạo. Thực sự tôi không có một câu hỏi nào để đặt ra với ông đại sứ cả, cũng như tôi không có một thỉnh nguyện hay là yêu cầu gì ông can thiệp với nhà cầm quyền Việt Cộng về vấn đề nhân quyền hay là cởi mở tự do gì cả. Bởi vì những vị cũng biết những việc làm này thì tất cả những vị tiền nhiệm của ông đại sứ cũng như các vị dân cử từ thượng viện, hạ viện cho tới địa phương đều đã làm những công việc này rồi đối với cái chính quyền Việt Cộng. Nhưng trước một cái áp lực nào đó thì chúng buộc lòng phải thỏa mãn những cái điều đó. Nhưng như quý vị biết, chúng thả một người thì sau đó chúng bắt cả hàng chục người. Chúng có nới lỏng về lĩnh vực này thì chúng lại siết lĩnh vực khác. Thì quý vị biết, ví dụ như chúng thả ông Hiếu Cải ra thì chúng lại bắt một số những người nữa. Do đó với tư cách là một người đại diện cho chính phủ Mỹ cũng như đại diện cho người dân Hoa Kỳ, trong đó có chúng tôi yêu cầu ông khi ông nhận nhiệm vụ và có cơ hội tiếp xúc với những đầu lãnh của Việt Cộng thì ông hãy nói với chúng rằng cái nguyện vọng tha thiết nhất của chúng tôi là yêu cầu chúng hãy từ bỏ cái vai trò lãnh đạo đất nước, hãy nhường cái quyền lãnh đạo đất nước cho người dân.
Chúng tôi có một câu hỏi bên đây, và sau đó chúng tôi đến thị trưởng thành phố cô Bảo Nguyễn này. Chúng tôi thấy chú như lúc đầu như chúng tôi sẽ một câu hỏi bên đây và một câu hỏi bên đây, và chúng tôi xin nhắc lại quý vị là chúng tôi yêu cầu quý vị giúp cho ban tổ chức cũng như cho mọi người đây, nếu quý vị có câu hỏi thì đặt thẳng câu hỏi chứ thay vì phần phục vụ chúng tôi. Xin cảm ơn quý vị, và chúng tôi qua một câu hỏi bên đây và sau đó sẽ đến thị trưởng thành phố Toronto.
I'm really happy that you come here today and visit the town. My name is Thuy, and I am the director of the Unforgotten documentary. I go, according to American estimate, about 165,000 South Vietnamese army prisoners have died in the Vietnamese communist prison, known as a re-education camp. What will you do to help the victim of this family? That is my first question. And the second question is, how many Vietnamese army prisoners are still being held by Vietnamese government, and where are they being held now?
Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. With regard to your second question, I don't know. I won't pretend that I know, because I don't. What I know is that when we have made requests to recover the remains of those that we have lost, they have been granted. Those requests have always been granted. And what that has put in motion is a virtuous cycle of sharing information about the war. We have faced, our two nations have faced our very difficult history honestly. And so starting from when I was there 20 years ago, we focused on recovering the remains of Americans who died. And now we are exchanging information with the Vietnamese so that they can recover the remains of Vietnamese who died. And we've been very clear, it's not Vietnamese from the north or Vietnamese from the south, it's Vietnamese who died. And all of the remains should be recovered and honored and laid in a final resting place. That has been our request. It's been our consistent request for more than 20 years, and now it is being honored. It has taken time. The other way we have addressed that legacy honestly is that we have been cleaning up the Agent Orange, the dioxin hotspots that still remain in Vietnam. And we have been helping people who suffer from disabilities without regard to cause. We've been cleaning up unexploded ordnance from Quang province and from other provinces because children continue to die when they step on unexploded ordnance, and we have to stop that. And we've been working together honestly. I don't think two countries have ever done more to address honestly the effects of war than our two countries. It's been a painful effort at times, but it's a sincere effort on our part, and it has been received as a sincere effort. And I think it's created the possibility for a different kind of relationship in the future. You spoke about those who died in re-education camps. Again, I would say it is not a northern value or a southern value. It's a Vietnamese value to show respect for those who were lost. It's a Vietnamese value, and we lean on that all the time. And we must deal with the past honestly. It's painful, but we have to deal with it honestly. And that's been the point I've made from the moment I arrived to my counterparts in the government of Vietnam.
Mr. Ambassador, I just want to let everyone know that because we're really getting close to brief, so if we could also give the response in a brief so we could get more questions. Now, before I invite Mayor Baumann, I also want to make an announcement to members of the press and media. I know some of you have been asking me to ask questions. After this town hall, we have a roundtable time reserved for media and press. So afterward, we'll invite you to a separate media conference room, and you could hold on to your question, and we'll invite you afterward. And Mayor Baumann.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. First off, as a openly gay American mayor, I applaud you for your success as an openly gay U.S. ambassador. And also, thank you. I have one question for you. How has Vietnam-U.S. relations been impacted by pro-democracy groups in the U.S. as well as in Vietnam?
It's a very good question.
I think that the impact that has been the greatest has been that of exposing young Vietnamese to ideas about what's possible in the future. I think that has been often the job of bloggers, but it's been often the job of individuals on Facebook who show young Vietnamese what's possible in a world where you're able to choose what kind of government you have and express yourselves freely. Choose the way you want to worship and engage in an unimpeded way with your fellow citizens. I think great hope resides in the role of civil society in Vietnam. I've said this once and I'll say it again. Because as civil society grows in Vietnam, you start to see models of inclusive governance, where it's not just officials who are saying, this is what you will do, citizens, but it's the private sector and civil society who are saying, members of the government, we will work with you to solve problems together. That's a healthy development. It's a relatively new development. We are supporting it. The U.S. government is supporting that development, especially in the areas of environment and health, LGBT rights, disability rights. We're doing all we can to support the growth of civil society, because I think in the end it will change the kind of Vietnam that exists. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Smith. And we have a question on this side now from Senator Korea, and we'll come back to this side. Senator Korea.
Mr. Ambassador, again, welcome to Little Saigon. Question on enforcement, this new trade deal enforcement. A little bit of background. A couple of years ago, when I was a state senator, 2 of my staffers, American citizens of Vietnamese heritage, went to Vietnam. They were arrested, held for 2 days, then they were deported to Thailand. Their only transgression was possibly their activity in the United States under my state Senate flag. They did nothing wrong in Vietnam, yet they were arrested as American citizens and deported. What assurances under this new trade deal do we have that these American citizens of future that visit Vietnam will not be arrested? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, my constitutional responsibility as Ambassador of the United States is to protect the safety and security of American citizens. I take that responsibility very seriously. So does everyone who works for me. We do everything we can to protect the safety and security of American citizens as they travel in Vietnam. We also do everything we can to make sure there's a level playing field for our businesses who are engaged in Vietnam. So actually, we don't need a trade agreement to do that. We do it already. The enforcement provisions within the Trans-Pacific Partnership are important because, as I mentioned, we're expecting high standards to be met by every member of TPP, and there's no double standard. Vietnam is the least developed of the countries in TPP. It stands to, economists say, that its GDP will grow by 30% when it joins the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a big benefit. But you know what? If they don't fulfill their obligations, we pull back those benefits. It's very simple. You have to implement what you've said you will implement, or the benefits end. And I think the Vietnamese have made a strategic decision. They don't want their economy owned by China. They want to have options. They want to have economic options. They'd like to engage with the 12 nations of TPP that represent 40% of global GDP. They, especially since the oil rig incident in Bien Dong last year, Vietnamese people don't want to be absolutely dominated by the Chinese. They would like us to be the -- investor. They would like us to be the #1 trade partner. And I believe that's an opportunity, and we should take advantage of it.
So who pulled back the agreement in the
Senator, if we could respect the process so we continue this dialogue. Thank you very much.
There's just a quick answer. There's a very strong enforcement provision. You can't get away with not implementing your commitments under the agreement.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We have a question now on this side, and
Kính chào ông Nhân Biểu. Tôi có chỉ có 2 câu hỏi thôi. Thứ nhất là cho tôi xin hỏi là một người Việt Nam mà có quốc tịch Mỹ mà bị nhà cầm quyền Việt Nam cướp hết tài sản á, thì ông Nhân Biểu là một cái người đại diện cho người Mỹ đang ở Việt Nam, có những cái ông đại sứ có cái gì mà để bảo vệ cái quyền lợi cho cái người Việt Nam mà mang quốc tịch Mỹ hay không? Đó là câu hỏi thứ nhất. Câu hỏi thứ hai, chẳng hạn như tôi là một ví dụ điển hình. Dạ, không. Tôi là một ví dụ điển hình đã bị chính quyền Việt Nam, nhà cầm quyền Việt Nam lấy hết tài sản. Dạ.
Ambassador, sorry, let me translate the question. The question is what protection there are for Vietnamese who have U.S. citizenship, but their properties, their assets in Vietnam get seized by the government of Vietnam, get taken away by government of Vietnam, but they are Vietnamese with U.S. citizenship. What protection there are for them?
This is a huge problem. I had 7 senators just wrote the president actually, but he passed the letter to me. 7 senators wrote that this has to be resolved for us to keep moving forward in this relationship. It's a very difficult problem. I also would say that it's a problem for all the churches in Vietnam. The Catholic Church used to own a great deal of property that's all been seized from the Catholic Church. It hasn't been given back. And if you want to have continued progress in Vietnam in the areas of health and education, you've got to allow churches to be able to educate people. You have to allow churches to be able to provide health services. I can't say that I know a magic wand to resolve this issue. I do not. I know that it's an enormous problem. We have to do what we can to resolve as many of these issues as we can, and I'll work on it. That's all I can promise. I'll try.
Thưa chị, các chị cũng hiểu cái câu trả lời của ông đúng rồi. Xin cảm ơn chị để chúng ta tiếp tục cái câu hỏi. Xin phép chị. Ở bên đây có một cái chú có giơ tay, xin chú giơ tay lại để cháu và chú Nhật. Dạ, xin mời chú Nhật. Dạ.
Thưa ngài đại sứ, tôi là Tâm Hòa Lê Quang Nhật, Tổng vụ truyền thông của Giáo hội Phật giáo Việt Nam Thống nhất của Hoa Kỳ. Theo chúng tôi được biết, thì tại Việt Nam hiện nay các tôn giáo vẫn bị chèn ép, khủng bố và theo dõi. Đặc biệt là trụ sở của Giáo hội Phật giáo Việt Nam Thống nhất là chùa Thanh Minh Thiền Viện, Đức Đệ tử Tăng Thống Hòa Thượng Thích Quảng Độ vẫn luôn luôn bị dòm ngó, chèn ép, và trước cửa chùa vẫn còn có công an theo dõi. Cho nên chúng tôi muốn biết là ngài đại sứ có xác nhận được cho rằng là chính quyền cộng sản tôn trọng tự do tôn giáo, mà nếu như không tôn trọng tự do tôn giáo thì ngài đại sứ có một cái phương pháp gì để can thiệp cho các tôn giáo ở Việt Nam, mà đặc biệt là Giáo hội Phật giáo Việt Nam?
Hiểu rõ. Hiểu, come and phiên dịch. We just come from this morning. We went to the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam, and Congressman Lowenthal, when he visited Vietnam, he met with the Most Venerable Thích Quang Do. And you know, the United States was founded on the principle of religious freedom. That is at the core of who we are. And I've traveled in Vietnam with our ambassador for international religious freedom, Rabbi Saperstein. And we continue to explain to the Vietnamese authorities, it doesn't threaten you to let people worship as they need to. It's not a threat for people to be able to worship freely. It does not bring down your government to allow temples and churches and communities of faith to operate. It's not a threat. this is a work in progress. It's very difficult. When the congressman visited Taekwondo, he painted a picture that was not very pretty of religious freedom in Vietnam. They're working on a law on religion, modifying the law on religion, and the good news is they want our input. And we say, you have to fulfill your international commitments. That means allowing people to worship freely, and the Vietnamese government, in modifying that law, is taking our comments into account. What will be the result? I don't know. But I see, from the 20 years ago I was there until now, I see a little bit of progress. I see a little bit of progress. There are faster church registrations. I've been to the house churches. It's another religion, but I think it matters. It doesn't matter what religion. We support freedom of religion. And I've been to house churches. I've visited religious leaders in every city that I go to in Vietnam. The Vietnamese know we are watching. We care about freedom of religion, and we certainly care about the Unified Buddhist Church, and we'll keep working on it.
Vâng, xin cảm ơn đại sứ và xin câu hỏi ở đây.
Kính thưa đại sứ và welcome to United States. Kính thưa quý khán thính giả. Yeah, my name is Kelly True, and I'm a representative for the Provisional National Government of Vietnam by Prime Minister Đào Minh Quân. The first question is, on July 7, 2015, the Vice President of the United States, Obama, invited one of the criminal Vietnamese communists, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, to Washington, D.C. at the White House. The second question is, well, this is Goldman, please. Another one is, yes, let me. Okay, Prime Minister Đào Minh Quân from the asking, he sued and complained the Vietnamese communist crime to the International Criminal Court, and the President Obama, we need help. We need the help from the United States, and we haven't get responsible back. And I can have the document here. I will give it out to you. And that's my question is. And also, the treasurer, we always send the letter to the government president of Obama. Then we don't get the response back. Today I have give it to you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you for giving it to me. Thank you very much. I have it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, người ta khen về người lên. Kính thưa tất cả quý vị, thực ra trong cái vai trò của chúng tôi là cái người mà phải chọn quý vị để đứng lên phát biểu, cũng giống như là đặt câu hỏi với ngài đại sứ đó. Cái vai trò này nó không có dễ, và thực ra tôi cũng không có muốn chọn cái vai trò này để làm gì, để mà được quý cô chú bác ở đây có những cái sự nghi ngờ là chúng tôi thi phi hay là chúng tôi chọn người này tại sao không chọn người kia. Cho nên lúc trước hết xin mong quý vị hiểu cho cái khó khăn của cái vai trò của chúng tôi. Cái thứ hai là tôi xin yêu cầu một lần nữa quý vị đặt câu hỏi, chỉ mỗi người một câu hỏi là tại sao. Tại vì nếu lúc nãy chúng ta đã yêu cầu tất cả mọi người như vậy, nhưng mà mình không tôn trọng nhau thì mình sẽ rất là khó có cái sự công bằng ở trong đây để mà điều hòa cái chương trình. Cho nên chúng tôi xin được phép giữ cái microphone, và chúng tôi sẽ mời quý vị đặt một câu hỏi đối với ngài đại sứ để chúng ta tôn trọng nhau và cho tất cả một cái thời gian. Do you have any answer to the statement?
I haven't read it yet. You just gave it to me. I will read it.
So, ngài đại sứ sẽ đọc. Dạ vâng, xin cảm ơn ông và xin mời cô đến vị.
Tôi công dân Mỹ Victoria Kim, thay mặt cho Hàng triệu Liên bang Việt Nam xin đề nghị với lại ngài đại sứ là chúng tôi đến đây là để dùng cái nói sự thật để gìn giữ, bảo vệ và xây dựng nước Mỹ này, và xin đề nghị là ngài đại sứ nói với tổng thống luôn là không có ai được quyền lấy tiền thuế và cái lá phiếu của chúng tôi mà đi tiếp tay với tội ác của bọn cộng sản, bọn khủng bố đang cầm quyền tại một chỗ Việt Nam. Như thế là như thế câu hỏi nè, thì như thế là đồng phạm đồng lõa với đất nước Mỹ sẽ bị gặp những tai họa tai ương như vậy, chúng tôi không muốn. Và xin đề nghị câu hỏi đây, xin ngài đại sứ, những người dân ở trong ngục tù người ta đứng lên, người ta liều chết, người ta viết đơn tố cáo tội ác chứng cướp nhân quyền và tiêu diệt chánh pháp Chúa thật Phật thật, mà gửi tới bọn cộng sản thì bị giết hại, người ta có gửi đến đại sứ quán, và xin ngài giúp dùng là chuyển tới tránh bọn cầm quyền cộng sản, đảng cộng sản và các tổ chức quốc tế, thì ngài có dám làm không? Và hay là ngài sợ giống như là cái ngài tùy viên đại sứ quán Mỹ bị đánh gần chết vì đi thăm linh mục Nguyễn Văn Ý tại ngày 11 tháng 5 năm 2011. Do vậy xin tôi rất lo lắng cho ngài, cho nên xin ngài cho. Xin phép để chúng tôi dịch cái câu hỏi cho ngài. Xin phép để tôi dịch câu hỏi đến ngài đại sứ. Mr. Ambassador, first of all, she wanted me a statement that please make sure the U.S. government know that U.S. taxpayer money should not be used to support a regime that does not respect human rights, that are brutal against its own citizens. So that's a statement. The question is, religious leaders who are in prison in Vietnam, when they send information on their case to the embassy, would you and embassy staff help them get the case in front of the Vietnamese government? Would you do that? That's the question.
Yes, we will do that, and we do all the time. We are most recently, for example, when we had the Human Rights Dialogue in May, we were able to go in and see Father Lee in prison. We will continue to press these cases. What I found is that when we draw attention to individual cases, the harassment goes down. So when we had the Human Rights Dialogue, afterwards, there were some people who were beaten up by plainclothes police. I brought them over. I said, first we visited them in the hospital, and then I brought them over to meet with Senator McCain, who was visiting. I said, "Does this put you at greater risk?" They said, "We're very brave people. We're very brave people." But what happened is that when we brought them over, we took pictures with them. They haven't been hassled anymore. So I believe that specific attention from the embassy to individual cases will help, and we do it all that we can. We will continue to do that.
Chúng tôi xin được phép ký dịch cái phần mà lần đại sứ nói là đại sứ sẽ làm cái gì. Tòa đại sứ Hoa Kỳ nói là nếu mà các vị lãnh đạo tôn giáo mà bị đàn áp mà gửi tài liệu của họ đến bộ ngoại giao hay tòa đại sứ, thì ngài đại sứ sẵn sàng đặt cái trường hợp của họ đối với các nhà lãnh đạo, các nhà cầm quyền cộng sản Việt Nam, cũng như là ông đã cho thấy trước đây có những cái trường hợp khi mà ông đến gặp những cái viên chức lãnh đạo của Đảng Cộng sản Việt Nam và cho họ thấy những cái hình ảnh của những người lãnh đạo tôn giáo, những tù nhân lương tâm bị đánh đập, và sau đó thì họ đã cảm thấy là những cái sự đàn áp đó nó có phần giảm đi, cho nên cái sự can thiệp của tòa đại sứ cũng có cái ảnh hưởng và ông ta sẵn sàng làm cái chuyện đó. Xin cảm ơn quý vị. Đây là một câu hỏi.
Kính chào đại sứ và tất cả quý vị. Tôi có hai câu hỏi. Câu hỏi thứ nhất, xin ông can thiệp cho những số phận anh em chúng tôi hoạt động ở bên Lào và Bắc Việt Nam trước năm 75. Hỏi gia đình họ muốn biết là sống chết thế nào, như thế nào. Đó là cái phần thứ nhất. Phần thứ hai là một số anh em được về tù, bây giờ họ cũng chuyển lãnh 40 ngàn ở Việt Nam. Có một số tòa lãnh sự ở miền Nam can thiệp cho được lãnh, nhưng một số vẫn cực chưa được lãnh. Xin ông can thiệp dùm. Đúng rồi.
The question is asking for the ambassador's response to providing assistance to special forces, Vietnamese special forces that are still remain in Laos and in that region.
I don't know what forces remain in that region, so I won't pretend that I do. I can only tell you what I do know, and that is that we will do our best if we can find any evidence that there are Vietnamese special forces still remaining in the hills. We'll do as much as we can about it, but I don't know right now.
Xin cảm ơn ông đại sứ và cảm ơn ông đại sứ và rất welcome những meeting này trong tương lai của đại sứ. Còn question là
nghĩ là tất cả những protest về human rights đều doesn't work. I think the Chinese behind that, they behind the police department in Vietnam. So as long as
Phu Trong visited the United States, he was one of the chief skeptics in the Politburo. Just the 3 top skeptics who are considered to be the closest to China and the farthest from us have all engaged with the United States in ways that they never did before. So I don't think this is a static situation. I think it's changing, and I think we have an opportunity now to win over some of those who are most suspicious of us and most want to keep our 2 countries apart. The Vietnamese people, I mentioned, and the chairman mentioned, there's not great support within Vietnam for a closer relationship with China. There are 92% of Vietnamese who want a closer relationship with us, and the leadership has to listen to that. They have to, and they do, and that's why they're coming to the United States in record numbers, and that's why they're looking for a closer relationship with us, and it gives us an opportunity, and we need to take it.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Xin mời chú chuẩn bị đặt câu hỏi luôn.
Mr. Ambassador, my name is Richard, and I have one question. In 1972, I was major in the 5th Vietnam Battalion Marine Corps. This battalion,
one of the Vietnam Division Marine Corps that have
we occupy the old Quang Tri citadel. We put the 3 Viet Cong division out of Quang Tri and destroy all the Viet Cong regiment in our citadel Quang Tri. Then we set up the Vietnam flag in there after 55 days and night fighting. But the Americans said we didn't know how to fight. What do you think about the Republic of Vietnam military? Thank you.
So the question is, what is your thoughts on the Republic of Vietnam military? Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I have greatest respect for those who fought for their country. I know that it was a very, very painful time, but I have great respect for those who tried to defend their country, those who fought in Quan Tri to defend the citadel for as long as you did. Everyone who fought for your country, I have enormous respect. So that is my view, and I'm humbled by your service. I respect what you have done, and I believe that in some ways by trying to move forward, we are honoring what you have done, and that's certainly our effort. So thank you for your service.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming and meeting with the community today. I have a question for you regarding the human rights monitoring. For you to be able to monitor, you have to be able to arrange meetings with activists and bloggers. In the past, every time when that arrangement have made, and the government made every way to prevent that from happening. They cause accident. They use the police to stop the people from coming to the meeting. How do you ensure that will happen when you want to meet with someone?
Well, what I can tell you is that there's a difference in the way the government deals with us and the way it deals with other countries. When the Germans or the British or the French invite activists to come and talk with them, the police stop them. When the United States does it, that's not what happens. We get to meet with them. And members of Congress who visited have been able to meet with activists again and again, unimpeded. There is a respect on the part of the Vietnamese authorities for the United States of America that doesn't extend necessarily to other countries. We have to use that respect and continue to meet with people, continue to advocate for them, continue to support them in their activities, and maintain that respect. The reason we have this leverage is Vietnam wants 2 things from us: prosperity and security. And they believe that we are a better partner than anybody else if they want to be prosperous and secure. That makes this an extraordinary time where we have extraordinary leverage to make progress in these areas. It won't be progress in a straight line. There will be things that will go wrong in the future, I guarantee it. And we will do our best to get things back on track. But to me, it would be shirking our responsibility if we didn't take advantage of this extraordinary time when Vietnam needs prosperity and security from us. If we didn't use that for leverage, that would be shirking our responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We have a question on this end.
Dạ, kính chào ngài đại sứ. Tôi có thể nói bằng tiếng Việt Nam tại tôi nghĩ ngài hiểu được tiếng Việt Nam. Và cùng chào tất cả quý vị dân biểu và quý vị quan khách. Và tôi tên là Phạm Thị Diệu Chi. Tôi là hội trưởng của Hội Phụ Nữ Dấn Thân. Thì tôi có một câu hỏi kính xin ngài đại sứ có thể giúp đỡ dùng là trong cái ngày xưa trong cuộc chiến Việt Nam, tất cả những người dân Việt Nam đều tin tưởng rằng nước Mỹ là một đất nước rất là chính nghĩa và rất là có tự do, và chúng tôi đã hoàn toàn tin tưởng cái điều đó. Thì ngày nay với bao nhiêu chục năm thống trị của Đảng Cộng sản, họ tuyên truyền rằng người nước Việt Nam Cộng hòa chúng tôi là chỉ là những người đi theo đế quốc Mỹ, và chúng tôi là những người đánh thuê cho Mỹ, và cái sự nhục nhã đó người Việt Nam chúng tôi vẫn còn uất ức cho tới bây giờ. Bây giờ người Mỹ trở lại, mong rằng cái chính nghĩa của đất nước Mỹ có thể nào giúp được cho dân tộc Việt Nam, đem lại cái niềm tin rằng nước Mỹ sẽ là đem chính nghĩa, nghĩa là không còn cái chế độ bạo tàn cộng sản, và chúng tôi sẽ luôn luôn lúc nào cũng là kính phục nước Mỹ, bởi vì đó là một cái đất nước rất tự do dân chủ. Và tôi mong rằng năm tới ngài đại sứ sẽ làm đại sứ cho một nước Việt Nam tự do không cộng sản nè. Và cảm ơn.
Yeah, well, some of the short translation. Mr. Ambassador, during the war, the people from South Vietnam believed that the U.S. is a righteous country. The U.S. Is fighting for the good cause. And now that we know that the communist regime in Vietnam have defamed the Republic of Vietnam, especially with the people saying that the Republic of Vietnam and the people of South Vietnam were fighting for, were puppets fighting for the Americans, not for themselves. So now that with the U.S. coming back to Vietnam, how do you ensure that the U.S. re-establish an image with the Vietnamese people that the U.S. government is a righteous country and will do the right thing and will restore the trust in the U.S. government?
Thank you. Cảm ơn nhiều. Có cảm thấy rất là sâu sắc ở đây, và tôi có thể I feel the sentiments that come with that question, and I thank you for your question. I think the way that we restore that image as a righteous country is that we do things together. We support Vietnam in dealing with health crises. We support Vietnam in dealing with crises in the environment, challenges in the environment. We choose to address our past honestly. We learn to trust one another by doing things together. You can't just talk. Talk is not enough. It's much better when you can actually act in ways that are collaborative. The United States policy is to support a strong, prosperous, independent Vietnam that respects the rule of law and human rights. We work together in all of those areas. Strong, prosperous, independent Vietnam that respects the rule of law and human rights. I believe that's a balance that we can strike, and the way we can build the kind of trust that was lost is by doing things together to build that strong, prosperous Vietnam that respects the rule of law and human rights.
Điều vâng, xin cảm ơn ý của ngài đại sứ là để chúng ta dùng lại cái niềm tin của người dân Việt Nam ở đất nước Hoa Kỳ là bằng cách là chúng ta chính phủ Hoa Kỳ cùng người dân Việt Nam cùng làm việc chung với nhau, cũng như là cộng đồng chúng ta ở đây, và chúng ta và Hoa Kỳ sẽ đặt cái vấn đề để mà chính quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam phải tôn trọng những cái luật pháp cũng như là tôn trọng những cái hiệp ước quốc tế mà họ đã cam kết, cũng như là chính cái hiến pháp của Việt Nam để bảo vệ cái quyền lợi của người dân Việt Nam. Xin cảm ơn quý vị. Và đây là câu hỏi.
Cùng đại sứ rất hân hạnh được gặp ngài tại đây. Tôi là Trương Văn Sĩ, 19 năm 11 tháng phục vụ trong quân lực Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Hiện tại bây giờ là chủ tịch của Liên minh Thế giới Chống Cộng 60 năm. Thưa ông đại sứ, theo lời đại sứ nói, ông rất hy vọng và ông tin tưởng rằng Cộng sản sẽ nghe cái gì ông nói và nghe cái gì của chính phủ Hoa Kỳ nói, hứa nhân quyền, hứa tự do, hứa đủ thứ. Xin ông trả lời giùm tôi, chừng nào ông trả lời câu hứa mà đem lại cho chúng tôi nghe hôm nay. Rất mong ngày sớm, những cái gì nó hứa ông nên làm trước đi, chứ đừng nghe nó nói. Chúng tôi nghe nó nói trước, tôi phải ở đây nè. Cảm ơn ông.
So Ambassador, do you need translation on that? Do you like some brief translation? Yeah. This Ambassador, the gentleman asked saying that it sounds from you that the government of Vietnam is willing to listen to what you and the U.S. government have to say about. Xin quý vị giữ im lặng dùm. That they are anxious to listen to what you and the U.S. government have to share with them in terms of what they need to do to move the country forward, to reform, sort of that. Could you answer the question of when you think those things that you just talked about can be delivered, or do you, he end by saying that they have trusted the communists too much and now they're here overseas, so they're asking you can you really trust the Vietnam government, and when can those things be realized?
The progress that I have seen in 20 years suggests to me we still have a long way to go, but if we look to the future, there's a possibility of much more progress. The recent decisions have accelerated progress towards more international integration, towards becoming part of the international community. I think the whole process is sped up in recent years, so I don't think it will take another 20 years to see the kind of progress that we're looking at. I think this year is a very, very important one. This year. I want to quote one thing that Congresswoman Sanchez mentioned my former boss, Pete Peterson. I know he's a friend of Congressman Rohrabacher, a friend of Congressman Royce. I don't know if you know Pete Peterson, a wonderful man, one of my heroes. He stood before a Vietnamese group in January, and he said, I want you to remember one thing. Nothing is impossible. And I think that's very powerful. If you decide there can't be any change, you can never trust people, there will never be progress, well then there never will be progress. But if you decide nothing is impossible and you go after it, then change is possible. Thank you.
Before the next question, I want to make a quick announcement. Trước câu hỏi tiếp tôi xin thông báo quý vị một điều là chúng tôi biết là ngày hôm nay cái thời gian rất là hạn hẹp, cho nên không thể nào nhận hết tất cả câu hỏi, cho nên văn phòng anh Lô Văn To đã có chuẩn bị những cái tấm kho như vậy. Nếu quý vị nào không có dịp để hỏi câu hỏi ngày hôm nay với ngài đại sứ, xin quý vị viết xuống tên, địa chỉ liên lạc của quý vị cũng như là câu hỏi của quý vị, và chúng tôi sẽ làm cái nhiệm vụ là chuyển những câu hỏi của quý vị đến ngài đại sứ cũng như là các nhân viên của Bộ Ngoại giao để ngài đại sứ nhận được cái câu hỏi của quý vị, và chúng tôi xin cảm ơn. Và chúng tôi chỉ còn thời gian cho 2 câu hỏi nữa, và câu hỏi này xong rồi có một câu hỏi kế tiếp là xong. Chúng tôi xin phép quý vị.
Dạ, tôi xin được nói tiếng Việt, tại vì ở đây là những người mà vote, những người ở đây đều là người Mỹ gốc Việt có phiếu, và chúng tôi muốn nói là chúng tôi có phiếu, và chúng tôi nói thay cho những người thầm lặng không có mặt ở đây hôm nay. Tôi muốn nói, tại vì ở đây tôi biết tiếng Anh. Tôi muốn nói là tôi muốn hỏi một câu thôi, là chúng tôi đã nghe lạc quan nhiều lần rồi, mấy chục năm rồi, bây giờ chúng tôi muốn bỏ phiếu cho những người mà sẽ thực hiện.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Madam Senator, how's your campaign?
My campaign is going great. We just finished the first month of our campaign. We've been raising a lot of money so that we can communicate with people. I've been going up and down the state of California over and over again. We've been to San Jose, we've been with the Vietnamese community there, we have been to Sacramento, to San Francisco, to San Diego, to Imperial Valley, to Fontana, to Los Angeles. It's very exciting.
Madam Senator, the gas price come up every single hour. What do you plan to do if you are senator?
Yes, well, one of the things that I've done is stop driving so much because the gas price is going up so high. I think we need to make an investigation. It seems to me like California is the state where the highest gas prices. First thing I would do is to investigate what's going on.
You keep go and never give up. Is correct?
That's correct. You know, it's like this community. You know that you can make a difference and you continue to work at what you need to do. And that's the way I feel. I feel that we have a great campaign. I feel that the Vietnamese community has worked with me for 20 years and I'm excited to be here with them today.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Come on. Thank you.
I suggest VCR I'm working for BBC Vietnamese.
Oh, great.
And also the local TV here.
Okay.
And I got two questions for you.
Okay.
The first question, you said that we have a 20 years relationship with Vietnam government. But one other thing is that 20 years never visit. It's not about human rights, it's about business. People own the Vietnamese American here. They have a product produced in US, never allowed in Vietnam. And so how you can fight for that?
I agree. One of the problems that I've had with these trade agreements, whether it was with President Clinton when we did the mutual trade agreement or the WTO ascension or even now with the TPP, I have always been against them because what I see is that the products from Vietnam come here,
yes,
but the products that are here, that are made here, do not go into Vietnam. Or more importantly, we can read all the press we want about Vietnam from the Vietnam state, but not one of our newspapers can be sent and published in Vietnam. It's completely wrong.
So you said that you already announced that you already mentioned it, but what about the U.S. government and Obama government and even the ambassador there? Did you mention that and how we can work with that?
Yes, well, it's very apparent that the administration under President Obama wants this trade agreement. And this ambassador works for this president. That is why he is very positive about the trade agreement. But certainly, when you look at the editorials that I have done, when I've worked with the press, you understand that the human rights conditions are still very bad in Vietnam, and they're not tied to this new trade agreement.
Okay, another question is a couple days ago, when they have the meeting with the leader of the Vietnamese parliament, and you have announced something, and you feel like helpless about what's going on in Vietnam, and not like what you say, and try to put a position for the human rights and for the structure in Vietnam. So in the last 48 hours, they have more harassment for dissidents. So if you know that information, how you can work and announce it?
Well, first of all, I would say to you that the head of the Communist Party is not a leader of that country. And I told President Obama it was wrong for him to meet with him. He's not even a prime minister or a minister of foreign relations. I believe that was wrong, and I signed a letter telling that to President Obama. That's the first thing. The second thing, as senator, the first thing that I would do in the United States Senate is to champion passing the Vietnam Human Rights Act. We have passed it over and over and over in the U.S. House of Representatives, but in the Senate it has been blocked. That would be one of my main things to do right away.
Okay, so how long does it take?
Well, the U.S. Senate race is just 18 months away.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Using legal recourse to address the issues and building the capacity of our partners. Vietnam has requested our help in building, in particular, its maritime capacity, and we are providing assistance in that area and will continue to do so.
And let me add an addendum to that as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, if I could, because the addendum would be there is also a law here, the Treaty of the Sea. And that treaty is recognized by the United States and all other ASEAN countries, indeed every other country in the world except one. And under that treaty, these international waters will remain open, and that is why the U.S. Fleet is in the international waters, and that's why we keep those waters open for freedom of navigation. And that is why we're working, as the ambassador shared with you, with ASEAN for a united front to make certain that this law is followed.
Okay, please respect.
My question is that
Wait. I'd like to ask for everyone cooperation because we have enough time for everyone. If we could just take our turn and let's be orderly. I have one question over here, and before I get to Anh Vũ Hoàng Lương, is Mr. Ando from LA Times who have a question.
Yes. You know, in DC, there's a big push for improving relations with Vietnam, but in OC, it's still very controversial. And I was wondering, in these past few days that you've spent here, what is your sense? Do you sense that the community is divided or more united toward improving relations?
I sense that there are some people whose hopes and expectations have been dashed in recent years, that their hopes haven't been fulfilled. But I also sense that there are many people who have high hopes for the relationship and high hopes for the future of Vietnam. I side with them. I believe that there are reasons to be optimistic, reasons to think that things will be better in the future, and I feel very strongly, and I think the evidence points in this direction, that our engagement influences the direction that Vietnam takes. That if we don't engage, we don't have a say. If we do engage, whether it's through trade or educational exchange, working together on health issues, working together on the environment, then we have a chance to have a little bit of an input. And I think there are many people who in Orange County who share that view.
I'd like to say something about that, the differences between Orange County and Washington. I think in Washington, much of the focus is around the trade issue and the TPP. I think it is because of Orange County that human rights, religious freedom, the rights of people to dissent have become part of this process. That's what Orange County has done. It is not that the people don't want to have reconciliation, but they have laid out the conditions of what is needed, and I think the rest of the nation is listening.
I'm from Bosa TV. You said back there that Vietnam needs America for prosperity and security, and obviously they also need America to balance out their relationship with other countries as well, especially to China. But our relationship with them is, of course, two ways. So on the other hand, what America needs from Vietnam in our relationship with them?
I think it benefits the United States to have powerful partnerships with countries around the world. My last job was Indonesia, where I was the #2 in our embassy, and there we were building a comprehensive partnership. The job before that, I was in India. We were building a comprehensive partnership. Now I'm in Vietnam, and we're building a comprehensive partnership. Well, I believe that those partnerships, where we develop partnerships even with countries that are not allies, benefit the United States because we together shape the future and we decide what sort of, how we can address the most complex issues that we have in the day. Chairman Royce has devoted an enormous amount of attention to U.S.-India relations. It's not because it's easy, it's because it's important for the United States. I think the same goes for building a partnership with Vietnam. It's not easy, but it's beneficial to the United States to have that partnership, to collaborate with Vietnam, and I think it will shape the kind of Asia that we would like to see rather than the kind of Asia that we don't want to see in the future.
My name is An from Quan TV and International Radio. You said that civil society in Vietnam can be named a few, and also you say you go to house church. I spoke to a priest who escaped Vietnam recently to Canada, and he said all church in Vietnam, the government is screening who can be priest, who can be monk. So, absolutely no belief
You're correct. The Venerable Thich Quan Do shared with me when I met with him the problem in that the Communist Party of Vietnam is attempting to dictate to the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam. And I've heard the same thing from Protestants and Catholics and across Vietnam. This is a huge problem. And it is one of the reasons why we continue to use Radio Free Asia, one of the reasons we continue to try to leverage for freedom of religion and freedom of speech in Vietnam. And I do not think it's wise for us to pretend like this is not what has happened. This is why my legislation to put Vietnam back on the CPC list is important, and why we have to continue to broadcast into Vietnam the truth to the people in Vietnam so that they understand. But that said, we're at a point now in Vietnam where 92% of the people want a closer relationship with the United States, right? And that said, we're at a point where religion still grows in Vietnam, and people still support the Hoa Hao Buddhists and still support the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam, or Catholics or Protestant ministers, even though they have to do a lot of their work clandestinely. There are some churches that are allowed to operate, but you and I know about the beatings that go on regularly, all right? So that's our role as Americans. I mean, we're unique in that our First Amendment to the Constitution starts with freedom of religion, and we know the Communist Party doesn't respect that. But our principle, to be true to our fundamental beliefs, is to continue to push back, because we know ultimately we will see in Vietnam freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and democracy for the people there.
Let me just answer quickly on civil society, because I've met with environmental groups, environmental NGOs. I've met with health NGOs, NGOs that are dealing with disabilities, NGOs that are dealing with LGBT rights. This is the beginning of something that's very important, which I think is more inclusive governance. The Ha Long Bay Alliance, for example, the effort is to protect or preserve the UNESCO World Heritage Site that is Ha Long Bay. It's extraordinary. Anybody who's seen it knows how beautiful it is. Government can't fix the problem alone. So it's private sector, NGOs, and government officials who are working together in an alliance. I think that's a model that's very important and can be replicated in other areas.
Mr. Ambassador, and also the Congressman up there.
Wait,
this is
we could.
Yeah,
if I could just hold on 1 second.
Ignoring me, I'm not appreciating you keep ignoring me. I'm sitting right here.
I have a list, sir. Have you finished your?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go to Mr. Huy and then Uncle. Mr. Huy first and Uncle.
Chào ông đại sứ và chào tất cả các vị nhân viên. Tôi có cái câu hỏi đến với lại các ngài, đó là trong cái quá trình mà đàm phán TPP thì hiện tại chúng ta đến khi nào chúng ta sẽ chấm dứt, và liệu là chính phủ Hoa Kỳ có đưa cái điều kiện nhân quyền vào trong đó là cái tiên quyết không, hay là các điều kiện gì khác? Tại vì tôi thấy là trong cái chuyến đi của ông Nguyễn Phú Trọng đến lại Hoa Kỳ, khi mà ông Trọng vẫn còn đang ở Hoa Kỳ thì chính quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam họ vẫn tiếp tục cản trở quyền đi lại của công dân, với cái trường hợp trong ngày hôm qua kia là blogger Nguyễn Vi. Cái chuyện mà người dân ở Hải Dương họ chỉ phản ứng về cái việc mà họ bị oan sai, thì có xe ủi đất cán qua người và cái hình ảnh và các video các vị đã thấy, thì tôi không biết là trong cái quá trình đàm phán tới thì chính phủ Hoa Kỳ có những cái biện pháp hoặc là những cái chế tài về nhân quyền trong cái việc đàm phán TPP với chính phủ Việt Nam hay không?
So the question again is on, given all the cases you have seen through video footages, all the continuous violation of human rights, including the case of a woman being crushed by the bulldozer, in the next phase of negotiations, what mechanism would the U.S. government put in place in the proposal for the TPP to address and kind of enforce that the government of Vietnam must really respect human rights?
In the next phase, Congress is going to play a very, very important role, because it is Congress that will decide whether Vietnam participates in TPP or not. And it's Congress that will decide whether TPP goes through or not. I think it is very helpful that members of Congress have been very clear with the government of Vietnam that it's not acceptable to have a country in TPP that is not making progress on human rights. So I think the next phase is actually more about politics than about negotiations. We're almost finished with the negotiations, but the next phase there will be great attention on Vietnam on the matter of human rights by the United States Congress.
I'd like to respond to that also. You know that what we voted on was a trade promotion authority to give the president the authority to negotiate. We will have to come back and then vote on the TPP. It only passed 218 to 208. So the Congress is very divided about this very issue. I personally voted against it because I do not want to wait until the agreement is negotiated and then to see whether the Vietnamese will follow the agreement and then to see how we will enforce it. I want to see the changes now and then I'll vote on it. I think we're doing things backwards by asking them to change as a result of the agreement. But I'm willing to listen, and I will tell you there are more senators and more Congress members in the next 4 months or so who are going to want to see what Vietnam does now. And I think that's the issue, not only after what takes place.
I would agree with my colleague here, the odd couple at work again. And the fact is that, and Mr. Ambassador, I know that I admire your optimism. I think that a real strong sense of realism as to how you deal with dictatorships and how you turn a dictatorship into a more democratic society, making the clique that runs Vietnam more prosperous will not bring freedom to Vietnam. And so, and when you have whatever economic openings we have towards Vietnam, if the clique still is in power and is able to direct the resources of who gets, for example, we talked about all the food that's being imported into Vietnam. Well, is it people who are outside the Communist Party clique that are able to distribute that food within that country? My guess is no. And as long as you have a Communist Party grip on power, no matter what we do in terms of promoting economic interaction, that will be manipulated to empower the clique that's in power. What we've got to do is look very closely to make sure, and that's, I have not voted, actually I voted with Alan on this whole trade pact issue. And so let's see some action out of Vietnam. For example, just one thing, how can you have people conduct a free enterprise society where everyone has an equal chance, or at least a great number of people have an equal chance, if you don't have a judicial system that's independent? China, what's happened in China, they do not have an independent judicial system. So what's happened? We have enriched China, but there are no more civil liberties in China today than there were 30 years ago. And in fact, what you have is a lot of rich communists there now. And so we have to make sure that, let's see something from the Vietnamese government before we start opening up trade with them that will enrich their clique.
I just want to let you know who I have on here so you can be sure we have enough time. I have Ngô here, and then I have Jihan, and then I have Đại, and then I have Ô Đặc Sao, and I have Dilek. So I have everybody on here. So just be patient. We have enough time. Okay. So
What about me?
You're now on.
The difference is what President Barack Obama said in different political philosophy has been the major obstacle between the relationship between countries. And as you know, the Vietnamese side, mindful of what's so-called peaceful evolution as a quiet strategy to overthrow the government by some color revolution or so. And as evident, a major concern is the General Secretary stated at the luncheon at the State Department, saying that respecting each other's political system as one of the foundation for the relationship between the two countries to move forward. So my question is, what did the United States say of its intention or commitment to the Vietnamese side to further this relationship? And also, I would like for member of Congress to add anything you have on that issue.
In 2013, President Trung Tan Sang visited Washington, and he and President Obama launched the Comprehensive Partnership. In that statement, and I urge you to take a look at it, both sides confirmed respect for different political systems. The President reaffirmed respect for a different political system. It's my belief that if we're to make progress in the area of human rights, and if we're to make progress in the area of workers' rights, it will be only because we signal that we are not seeking the overthrow of Vietnam's government, but we show respect for a different political system. If we were to suggest that we were seeking to change that government, we would make zero progress in these other areas. The different people are going to differ on that approach, but the approach of the administration is only through respect for different political systems can we make progress on the most difficult issues.
From the standpoint of Congress, we've got a little different perspective on this. We view this as commensurate with the speech by Ronald Reagan to Gorbachev. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. What he was speaking about was the wall, not unlike the wall in Vietnam, that keeps many of the people in Vietnam from having freedom to travel where they want to travel. The wall which frankly keeps information out, the wall that keeps people from practicing freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. So from our standpoint, we think Reagan had the right approach, which was to go ahead and negotiate with the Russians, but at the same time make very, very clear that fundamental human rights are the building block of progress for all humanity in every country. That's the legacy that the United States has frankly created with the foundation of the First Republic, based on this ideal, not based upon ethnicity, not based upon nationality, no, based upon a belief, an ideal in freedom. And I think freedom has to continue to be communicated, fundamental rights, human rights, and if we continue to communicate that, we will continue to make progress.
I don't respect their system at all. And I think we should, as Americans, respect that type of vicious dictatorship. I'll have to go. Good to see you. He's a good buddy.
Mr. Ambassador, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised to hear that you said that you're very like quan about the human rights condition to be improved in Vietnam. However, I see some contradiction. First of all, when Mr. Obama met with Mr. Phu Trọng, he very eloquently said that whether or not the two countries can get close together and have a better relationship depends on the improvement of human rights condition in Vietnam. And yet, Mr. Phu Trọng immediately said that people in Vietnam have never been freer than they are now. So how can that be a condition that we, our readers, for example, be lạc optimistic about? Also, if we pledge to respect each other political system, and one political system doesn't respect human rights, doesn't give free speech, is that a contradiction?
I've been part of this relationship for 20 years, and I have seen progress. It's not enough, but I have seen progress. That is what makes me lạc quan. I think that the trends are in a positive direction when it comes to greater freedom of expression, greater freedom of religion, freedom to worship. And I think there will be progress on workers' rights that will be very significant as a result of U.S. engagement with Vietnam. I can only comment on the relationship over the last 20 years. So I'm not going to contradict the statement of Nguyen Phu Trong or anybody else. But I can say that I have seen progress, and that makes me lạc quan. I want to just note, though, that when it comes to, because there have been frequent references to TPP, when it comes to the decision about TPP, I don't have a vote. The gentleman to my right have a vote on TPP, not I. This will be decided by the United States Congress. So I hope Vietnam's leaders are listening to these views on human rights. I hope that the views of the people who will vote on this important agreement are taken into account by Vietnamese leaders. I think they are, because there have been many congressional delegations, Senate delegations that have come through and reflected views that are different from those of the administration. And that is very healthy. It shows that democracy is alive and well here, that we respect, very much respect, the separation of powers, the role of Congress in this process. And I think that's a very useful lesson for Vietnam.
Yeah. Very interesting. When I was in Vietnam and I spoke to the government, and one of the things I raised was the prisoners of conscience that were arrested. And I said, if you want support, release the prisoners of conscience, all of them. And the leadership said to me, we don't have any prisoners of conscience. I said, oh, really? And then they said, they all broke the law. But then they said, but maybe our laws have to change. So I think there's a place that we can move to, but we haven't yet moved there. But there is an opportunity.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, Member of Congress, this question, I work for TNT Radio, but I'm also a U.S. Army veteran. I served my country for 13 years. What happened tomorrow if the damn Chinese were to declare an air defense zone around the South China Sea? Now, the Malacca Strait is the second busiest shipping strait where most of oil and supply, where most of military traverse through. If they were to declare an air defense zone, and if they were to start choking us, will the U.S. start acting much more aggressively militarily to stop the freaking Chinese from hanging attack?
Good question.
If the Chinese were to declare an ADIZ, it would not be legitimate. 50% of the world's seaborne cargo passes through that part of the world, through the South China Sea, Bien Dao. And so any declaration, when these issues have not been resolved in accordance with international law by any stretch of the imagination, a declaration of an ADIZ would not be legitimate and would not be respected by the United States.
And okay, thank you, Mikey.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, see you again, and all the Congress. I represent for Popular Pig Production, and my partner is a Korean media. And we would like to know, because that is happened like many years, all of my friends sent me the email and cries for help. Because, like the Hanoi government took the people land in South Mekong Delta and build all the factory when the people don't agree. And they beating people, they punish people because of the protest. And that people is a low voice. They don't have a voice. So can you bring that issue to the Hanoi government? They cannot take the land of the people when the people don't agree.
Thank you.
Yes, I can, and I will.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was shorter than expected. Yeah.
My name is Quan from Radio Free Asia. I have two quick questions. The first question is, what must happen
before without NATO women to Vietnam? The second question is, in your opinion, what three specific things that overseas Vietnamese community can do for help Vietnam?
Thank you. Last October, the Secretary of State announced a partial lift of the lethal weapons ban, specifically for maritime purposes. To have a full lift of the lethal weapons ban on Vietnam would require significant, continued, sustained progress on human rights. I'm asked this often by Vietnamese leadership, and I am crystal clear. It requires significant, sustained progress on human rights. And I pull out this card. This is what it means. And my counterparts know what that means. Second, on what Người Mỹ gốc Việt can contribute, I think there's, in my view, speaking personally, there is nothing more important than educational collaboration between our two countries. If you want to lay a firm foundation for a good relationship going forward, if you want to provide hope to young Vietnamese for a better future, then education is the best possible investment. For 20 years, you heard me over there, for 20 years we've invested in the Fulbright Economics teaching program, and it has taught the principles of modern economics. It revolutionized the teaching of modern economics. We have partnered with the private sector to improve teaching and engineering, especially for women, science, technology, engineering, and math. But this is through a partnership with Intel and other corporations. And in the future, we will have in Saigon, in 3 different sites, a Fulbright University Vietnam. And I think that is a tremendously significant decision by both sides to invest in the future. And I think support for educational collaboration is the best possible way that people can contribute to a positive future for Vietnam.
We have 5 questions on here, and if we keep the question really brief, and if the ambassador will answer, we can get through this circle. We can get through this round. Okay, so we'll go and learn first.
Yes, regarding the government and the people of Vietnam, we heard from Vietnam, we heard like government of Vietnam and people is one. On overseas, we hear opposite. People and government is opposite. So I hope with all the years you spend in Vietnam, you know enough to know the answer for this. What is the real similarity and the real difference between the government and the people of Vietnam?
Well, the chairman and I have both quoted a poll about 92% support for a close relationship with the United States. We're not talking about the government of Vietnam. That's a poll of the people of Vietnam. So the aspirations of ordinary Vietnamese are for a closer relationship with the United States. I don't know what that poll would produce among government officials. I have no idea. But there are at least indications that many leaders in Vietnam would like a closer relationship with the United States. And that is what I focus on. My job is to focus on how we can bring our two countries together in a way that respects American values. And I think that's very, very important. You can't build a relationship irrespective of American values. We have big differences with the government of Vietnam, especially in the area of human rights, and I'm never shy about expressing those differences. I think that's the best way I can answer your question.
Okay, my name is Phong, and last question I just follow this guy, and it's my official question from BBC Vietnamese and the local TV here before TV. I got 2 questions. The first question, you said that try to tell the Vietnam government to change the law or something. But right now, most 20 years, the 88, 79, 258 still go on. They appeal that to harass the dissident people in Vietnam. So it's still until Nguyễn Phú Trọng came in here, they still do it the last 24 hours that you know that news. So what you got to do, my first question, what you got to do to have to work with the Vietnam government to eliminate that law? And number one.
Unfold. I do apologize that we when I said
Take a very quick.
just one
Okay.
question. Okay, could I just repeat your question real quick? It's basically what
I think I understand.
what would the government do on those DPs?
Well, for one thing, when I first went to Vietnam 20 years ago, the National Assembly was a rubber stamp. That is not the case anymore. The National Assembly it's not like our Congress. It's not fully independent. But it is not a rubber stamp. It is very active in the area of oversight and of amending laws so that they can reflect the new constitution. In 2013, Vietnam passed a new constitution that by many accounts is a much more progressive constitution than what they had in the past. And the effort that is underway now is to revise laws so that they are consistent with the 2013 Constitution and Vietnam's international obligation, including its ratification of the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. That's a complicated process because it involves the party, it involves the government, and it involves the National Assembly. But it is an active process that is underway, and comments on that process have been welcomed. Our comments on revision of the civil code, the criminal code, and the criminal procedure code have been welcomed. Whether they're all included in the final legislation when it goes through, I don't know. But I know that we are engaged on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis, with Vietnamese counterparts and how those laws are changed. You mentioned a number of very controversial decrees, and there have not been arrests, with one possible exception. Since I arrived as ambassador, there have not been arrests that have used those controversial decrees as the basis of those arrests. I don't think it's because I arrived. I think it's because Vietnam has some things that they would like from us, and they know that the United States, and particularly members of Congress, are watching.
Thank you.
Since 1995 until now, you are the sixth ambassador to Vietnam. And Pete Wilson, Pete Peterson, Raymond Burger, and also Michael Morin. During that time, it seemed to me like the relation between the two countries not sweet like after Michael Mahale and David Shea and now you. So during that 20 years, you were the one who probably observed the most the evolution between the two countries' relationship. So what have the two countries achieved so far? What should be done? And what would you do during your tenure as the sixth ambassador to Vietnam?
Thank you. I think we've done a lot to address the past. Early on, we focused only on POW/MIA issues. Then later on, thanks to Michael Morin, we started focusing on cleaning up dioxin. In recent years, we've contributed a great deal to cleaning up unexploded ordnance. We have, in the last 20 years, we've expanded our collaboration in health and in the environment and in education and in trade, very, very importantly in trade. And we've also begun to develop a security relationship. All that happened under my predecessors. What is changing now is that Vietnam is signaling much greater ambition about the kind of relationship that we can have in the future. At the beginning of this year, my counterpart in the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry said, we want to move beyond bilateral cooperation to regional and global collaboration on issues of importance. One of the agreements that was signed last week in Washington was a peacekeeping agreement. So Vietnam will contribute peacekeepers. That's collaboration that goes beyond the region. It's global collaboration. We signed an agreement on global health security. That's collaboration that goes beyond bilateral to regional and global. We're starting to share the lessons of cleaning up unexploded ordnance and cleaning up dioxin with other countries that have suffered for some of these difficulties as well. We're collaborating more in the United Nations than we ever did before. We're collaborating in ASEAN more than we ever did before. So we're moving to a different place, and it's because of the work of great people like Pete Peterson. It's because of difficult decisions have been made before I arrived to deepen this relationship. My hope is to continue that work, push it forward, and move the relationship to help move the relationship to the next level.
Thank you, Martin.
Can I have a light question? Can you cook what favorite food, Vietnamese food that you like? Miền Bắc, miền Trung, or miền Nam?
Well, my favorite food is bánh xèo. And I know it's Vietnam, but I was in Ho Chi Minh City, and they invited me into the kitchen of the restaurant where I was eating, and I cooked bánh xèo right there on the spot. Then in Hue, I was given the opportunity to cook bún bò Hue.
No way.
And I did it with a master chef, and he basically moved my hands so that it was done properly. I don't really know what I was doing. And then before Tet, I cooked bánh chung, and someone taught me exactly how to tie the pieces of what is yes, because we rolled, we rolled up the pork, we put in the mung bean, put it inside the sticky rice, wrapped it in the leaves, and then cooked it overnight. It's very good. There's a wonderful story about the legend of bánh chung and why it's so important. I won't bore you with that story, but it's very symbolic. It's a very symbolic food. And for me, this is great fun. I really, truly respect the cultural traditions, the history, the people of Vietnam. It's difficult language. I respect these things very much. So for me, it's a great pleasure when I can show my respect for these traditions, for Vietnam's amazing and difficult history, and for its astonishing people.
Thank you, Professor. We almost done, so actually, Mr. Dang Xiong, if I could ask a question.
Yeah, but I don't want to ask you that it's very friendly question. Before 1975, there are so many U.S. ambassadors as well-known of the Vietnamese community. And today in the embassy in Hanoi, you still hang the picture, of Mr. Henry Cavalos,
yes,
Mr. Ferrer Nostin, Ambassador Bunker, and Ambassador Martin still hanging in the wall of the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi?
Yes. All of them are still hung on the wall at the embassy in Hanoi. And there's one person who never held the title of ambassador, Chargé d'Affaires Desai Anderson. But I think of him as an ambassador. The first ambassador in Hanoi was Pete Peterson, but the first Chargé d'Affaires was Desai Anderson. So we put his picture up there as well because he contributed in a huge way to the normalization of relations. And someday when I leave, my picture will be hung there too, and I'll be very proud to have it hung there. And someday we'll have a new embassy as well.
And now we have the last question. Mr. Lê Kính Trúc, Mr. Lê Kính Trúc, could you ask the last question? Yes.
Kính chào dân biểu Esroy, chào dân biểu Lowenthal, chào đại sứ. Tôi nghĩ rằng là đại sứ có lẽ chưa đi thăm quần đảo Trường Sa.
Have you visited Trường Sa Island?
Tháng 4 năm ngoái tôi được Bộ Ngoại giao mời đi thăm 10 đảo ở ngoài quần đảo Trường Sa.
Mời chú đặt câu hỏi dùng dài.
Vâng.
He visited the island last April, but chính vô câu hỏi để.
Tôi đã nhìn thấy tận mắt cái sự cải tạo của Trung Quốc, chiếm đảo Trung Quốc, và 10 đảo cải tạo Việt Nam đang cải tạo quần đảo Trường Sa. Trong 5 điểm quan trọng nhất của thông cáo chung Việt Mỹ vừa rồi, tôi không thấy có điểm nào đề cập lớn đến vấn đề Biển Đông. Thì tôi tự hỏi, có phải là Hoa Kỳ đang lúng túng, Hoa Kỳ đang lúng túng trong vấn đề giải quyết vấn đề Biển Đông? Trong đó có 3 yếu tố quan trọng nhất là Việt Nam, Trung Quốc và Philippines hay không?
Okay, so the question is in the joint declaration that's put out by our President and Secretary General Fu Trong. In there, there's no mention of the EC or the Biển Đông or the EC issue or South China Sea issue in regard to the island. So his question is that, is it because the U.S. Doesn't quite know what to do in regard to the U.S. policy in what China is doing with building up islands and in the disputed area?
There is mention in the joint statement of maritime security and the importance of collaboration in building Vietnam's maritime domain awareness. We have had many opportunities to express our views publicly on what's happening in Bien Dong, including at the Shangri-La Dialogue recently when Secretary of Defense Ash Carter visited the Shangri-La Dialogue, participated in the Shangri-La Dialogue. There is actually quite a confluence of views between the United States, Vietnam, and the Philippines on what needs to be done in the South China Sea. We do not want to see a situation where each of the ASEAN claimants has to go one by one to China to press its claims. That's not effective. It's much more effective when ASEAN is unified, especially when the claimant countries are unified in their international approach to the challenge. And so the United States supports a process that keeps the ASEAN countries together in dealing with the challenges in the South China Sea. It's not something that should be United States responsibility alone. It's something that should be the United States working with ASEAN partners to try to resolve.
Yeah, thank you. Xin cảm ơn tất cả quý vị. That concludes our press and media roundtable. Thank you very much for coming and appreciate your questions.
So what's
Chỉ có Hồng Việt là được đúc cày ha. Thôi đủ rồi.